Back with another episode of Local Roots. Hi, I'm Todd Studer. If you caught the earlier show on Morning Coffee, you already heard me talk about the set. But if you are just a fan of Local Roots, I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I'm at right now. Ultimately, this will be the set where I record both shows. It's not going to look anything like this. My friend and partner at the studios on Willow, Kyle Ranny, came in and did some of his fancy studio and lighting work in here to make it look... well, it's definitely different, and I kind of like it. But we've got big plans for this area, and we're going to put up some acoustical panels that is going to make it look like we're inside in a den, if you will, with some furniture and maybe a wood-burning stove. That'd be kind of cool too, wouldn't it? Lot coming up that we're going to be doing in here, and I'm looking forward to taking you along the journey as we continue to make progress. So that's the idea for coming into this studio. You can kind of see where we're at right now, and this is where we're at. Big open room. Not a lot going on, but we do have some cool lighting happening. On today's show, we're going to learn a little bit more about human resources. And this is a fascinating conversation because Amy Luckenbill with HR Helix, she's been doing HR for a long time, and she understands it in a way and has the ability to explain it in a way that I could even understand it. And HR has just kind of been like this fuzzy thing that sits out there that I don't really understand. I know that I need to pay attention to them because they're kind of let us know what's right and what's wrong, but it goes even farther than that. And she has this company, HR Helix, that does HR work for small companies, like 3 or 4 employees. So this is going to be a really interesting episode for you to pay attention to, because I have a feeling that ultimately, not only can she make your business better, but she can help you with employee retention too. So all of that coming up today with Amy Luckenbill on Local Roots. Service Master Restored by Schmader knows it's hard to get back to normal when you've suffered serious property damage due to flooding, fire, and smoke, and left with all sorts of questions about how to get your home or business back to normal. How do you do that? By giving Cindy Schmader a call. Here's her phone number, 402-339-9911. Get that in your phone. She hopes that you never need it, but when disaster strikes, you're going to be very happy you have it. 402-339-9911. If you're looking for all natural health solutions in Southwest Iowa, it's Bambi's Green Acres Natural Market. Now, she's located at 805 South Main Street in Council Bluffs, which, by the way, is just a few blocks from where we are at here at the studios on Willow. And she's been serving our area since 1997. All of Southwest Iowa has been coming to Bambi for a lot of years to get her wide selection of vitamins, supplements, essential oils, herbal remedies. 37 years of experience is going to help Bambi she can help you reach your health goals. Again, 805 South Main Street is where her shop is in Council Bluffs. You can find her online at bambisgreenacres.com. Bambi's Green Acres Natural Market, putting health in your hands. Welcoming first-time guests into the studio on Willow is always fun for me, and this is Amy Luckenbill. She is with HR Helix. Thank you so much for coming in.
It is a pleasure to be here. The building is beautiful. You're doing a great job in the studio. I'm just delighted.
Well, thank you so much for that. I'm grateful, and also congratulations to you on the launch of your own podcast.
Right?
How about that?
Thanks to you. Yes, HR Helix is my business, and then I also do a lot of volunteer work with the Human Resource Association of the Midlands, which is our local HR professional organization. 800 to 1,000 members of HR people in the Omaha Metro, Council Bluffs side included. And HR Wine Bar is the podcast that we have started maybe to bring HR into the 21st century
Right.
as far as media and accessibility and ideas and thought leadership goes. So HR Wine Bar is our podcast. I co-host with Jamie Mormon, who is the director-elect for the state level, HR Nebraska, and I will go into the presidency for HRAM, Human Resource Association of the Midlands, in January. So the podcast is a volunteer effort to build community for our professional organization.
Well, let's just rip the Band-Aid off with this because a general feeling for people who are not in the industry is that human resources is basically the fun police. That
it's so funny you say that, Todd, because we just recorded episode 7
Okay.
with our current president. Her name is Bryn Reed, about HR's PR problem. And
Okay.
that's the name of the episode.
Right.
HR has a PR problem. And we've identified a few different reasons why. One of which is that HR originally was an administrative function, right? It was paper pushing
Mm-hmm.
and just, moving things around, getting the paper into a computer system, payroll, and lots of dots and squiggles, as I call them, right? Detail work and compliance. HR has evolved, kind of Gen 2, right? Is about being a partner with the business owner to understand how business decisions affect people and how your people strategies affect business. So that's number 2, generation 2, which is I don't know that the world has caught up with generation 2 2.0
Right.
on that. And so the evolution of HR plays a part of that. The next generation 3.0, we're going into technology and AI and how work is going to change in the next 20 years, right? Probably 40 to 50% of the jobs that will exist 20 years from now, we don't even know what those are, right? Who knew that an open AI prompt generator would be a full-time job? That's a thing out there. Is
It
how do
needs
you,
to be, though.
and it needs to be,
Yeah.
right? And that's just in the last 2 to 4 years that we've seen that type of work take hold. So as a thought leader in HR, which I consider myself to be, we need to be thinking as a profession very strategically about how work will change and how we balance what's ethical, what's good for the business with what's good for our people, right? And HR sits in that space. What most of the general public doesn't understand about HR is as many times as an HR person is the fun police and says, no, we're not going to do that. As many times as they do that, they're also saying to owners, no, we're not going to do that. Well, why? Well, because it's illegal. You can't treat people this way, right? But that's not the public face of HR.
Mm-hmm.
That's the private business conversation behind the scenes. This might be a better strategic way to do this, or this is a compliance issue, or, let's think critically about that. But the general public doesn't hear those conversations about how often HR is fighting for people because they can't talk about those things to the general public. So, yes, sometimes we're the fun police, but we're also the ones always put in charge of the fun. Like, what sense does that make? Like, people don't want to do the things I want to do. So, I want to go to the opera or, theater, those types of things. And that's not always what the general population wants to do. So don't put me in charge of your events.
Oh, okay. I'll get you off the list of people who are going to call about that.
Yeah, thank you.
But here's what I'm hearing from you
Yeah.
as you're talking about this, and I think about the way things used to be going back. I'm just pulling a number out of here, 40 years ago,
Sure.
and back then, retention for businesses
Wasn't that 1970 though, 40 years ago?
Oh, it was 1940.
Okay, great. Good to know. Good to know.
But retention back then wasn't as big of a thing as it is now.
Well, and I have theories about that.
Oh, but that's what I mean is that people have more choices now, I think, than what they used to. When you would get a job, and maybe it does go back past 40 years, but when you would get a job, you did everything you could to keep that job. And now staying for 3 years is that about average? I think it's really not.
Depending on the industry and the level, like they're saying right now that a C-suite level leaving every 18 to 24 months is average.
Yeah.
And so if that's the C-suite, and now we'll bring it down to, entry level hourly. I once had a client ask me, why do people leave for 50 cents an hour somewhere else? And I was like, well, you're thinking of 50 cents an hour against your salary.
Mm-hmm.
Let's think of 50 cents an hour for someone who's making $10 an hour, just to make the math easy.
Right.
Right? That is a 20th of their income. Mm-hmm. So, just by the ratio, that's enough for them to leave, right? 5% is enough for somebody to
Oh,
leave.
certainly.
Would you leave a job for an additional 5% at your salary? Absolutely, you
I
would.
didn't keep a job when I was offered an additional 3%.
Correct. Because you
So,
considered it as an affront, as a top performer, as a
mhm.
high achiever, as the person who was driving the business and making money, right? To get a 3% COLA, cost of living adjustment, was a slap in the face. And that, unfortunately, is the reason that people are leaving so often.
Well, the reason I brought up the longevity and the retention part of it is because when you start, you said you're dealing with owners.
Mhm.
That to me is a direct correlation into retention, because if you are helping the owners understand, look, you can't do that for these workers, then that in theory would give them another reason to stay because they haven't had that negative experience that you stopped the owner from bringing to them.
Correct. And it is, I think you're leaning outside of pay now, right?
Yeah.
There's what we call in HR total rewards. What's the total package that we're offering you? Which is your pay, your benefits right now. That's a huge piece of
Mm-hmm.
the package is, can you, and I do have ways, by the way, of leveraging benefits and keeping your costs down. We need to talk. I've got some great connections
Right.
to make in the broker industry. Um, it's your total package on that, but it's also the work environment. It's also the flexibility, the conversation about returning to the office, right? And it's about how you treat people on the day to day and who they're working with and do they have friendships. It's about, can they, and I don't like the term work life balance. I like the term work life integration. How is your work life and your home life, how are they integrated with each other? If a nurse from the middle school calls and says, Bobby's sick, you need to come get him, is there any kind of resistance from your boss when you have to go? Right? Family takes precedence. At the same time, if you're a mortgage broker and you have to close on a house, maybe you call your spouse and say, no, no, it's your turn to go.
Right.
I need to do this right now. And it's about giving people the freedom, because they're grown adults. It's about giving them the freedom to say, you have to gauge your work against your home and make the right decision in each of these moments. And so I think people in general value that as much as they do a 5% raise, right? All of these things we're balancing. It depends on our age. It depends on, the balance of how much our mortgage is. I was lucky enough to buy a house 10 years ago and not last year.
Right.
Right? And so everyone's finances are different, everyone's family circumstance is different, and employers on the owner side need to understand that life is not what it was 40 years ago when mom was always the default parent who probably stayed home, or if they weren't home, they only worked from, 10 to 3 so that they could drop off and pick up. That world is gone. And so we need to make sure that work is evolving with the world.
I'm still learning a lot about this because the industry that I spent my career in flies in opposition of everything you're talking about, which
And there
because I made very little money working in the radio industry. And that's the way that it is. There's a few at the top, but they're the outliers. They're not the norm. And
Correct.
the fact that this particular industry there's something about it that makes all of us want to stay in it because it's not the money. It's not the work life because I was
Right.
told at the very beginning, family comes first, except when it doesn't. Because
Uh-huh.
if there's a storm and I'm doing storm coverage, I have no choice. I'm the guy. I have to go.
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter what's happening in my family. I
Mhm.
have to go. That's that industry. So all of the things you're talking about, I'm still learning.
Right, and some industries are slower to change than others. I don't know what radio looks like right now. I haven't worked with a radio
That's a
house.
whole therapy session that we can get into another time.
Well, and
But
there's the whole thing too
yeah.
about HR is sometimes I'm the resident therapist, and
Hmm.
I'm like, I am not trained for this. For this, I have a good heart. I listen. I study a lot of things that have to do with people's thought processes and trauma and those types of things. You have to be informed about those those things. But treating HR as your resident therapist is probably not the best the best approach
Oh, it's
to
just
having a business run well.
yeah, it's just the low hanging fruit. You're here,
Right,
so we're going to
right.
talk. But at some point, you decided that there's an opportunity for you to also be an entrepreneur.
Sure.
And that's what HR Helix is something that you have created.
Correct.
Was this, did you see this model anywhere else, or did you come up with this on your own that, you call it fractional HR?
Mhm.
Did that exist before you brought it to the region?
So the term fractional is probably a newer term than when I actually started HR Helix. HR Helix is 8 or 9 years old. I've had it for quite a long time, even when I was working a full-time
Mm-hmm.
HR director role. And I did it part-time for kind of friends and family who had businesses and needed a little, support. And what I saw in their situations was that they have small companies, as low as 3 employees, like very small. So thinking that you don't need HR when you have only 3 employees is a mistake. And they would call me and say, "Hey, we're dealing with this. What are your thoughts?" And it might be people related. It might be staffing. One of my clients called me the unicorn finder. I'm like, no, I'm just really good at what I do, and I'm not going to bring you anybody
Right.
who doesn't meet my standards. If I wouldn't want to work with them, I don't want to bring them to you.
Hmm.
So aside from Unicorn Finder, they would also call me and say, "Hey, here's a PR issue we're having," because HR sometimes takes up that mantle as well, depending on the size of a company. Right, a huge company is like Cerner or something. They have a whole department that does PR, but a small company will turn to HR and say, "Okay, if we message this way, what can we expect back?" And HR goes, "Ooh, maybe don't do that." Both from a PR standpoint outside of the organization as well as to the employees internally. Right. And so there's some element of that I work with clients as well. What are your thoughts about this? Or, in any case, there's a myriad of different things that being a strategic business partner for owners gives me the opportunity to bring my wealth of experience to an employer who does not have the budget, office space, headcount, or any of the things that warrants having a full-time HR person. And rather than, and there's nothing wrong with hiring an administrative assistant to do some of those things off the side of their desk, but that person is not going to have the expertise, the certifications, the background, the depth to handle complex issues like FMLA running concurrently with ADA, running concurrently with work comp. They're not going to have those skills, right? And so I could bring that level of executive knowledge and support to these small organizations. And then just recently, I've decided to do that full time. The term fractional has come about kind of post COVID as folks were shown the door. They just couldn't manage the headcount, so
Right.
people were getting laid off and fired just by the nature of the businesses they were in. And so fractional really just means part-time contractor. But fractional is kind of
Makes sense.
the new sexy term that,
Sure.
that folks are using on it. So
How much fluidity is involved with what it is that you do? Is there a big learning curve that you say it's just always stuff coming in that you need to make sure that you know the latest of what's happening?
that is a great question. Right now, yes, you just always need to know, or you need to have somebody on tap who knows. As far as compliance goes, right now, 2025 has been huge. Again, we have an episode on HR Wine Bar called The Wild Wild West. I believe it's episode 2, about how quickly the world of employment law has changed in 2025. It's the wild, wild west. But the compliance pieces for a small employer, I don't want to say they're secondary. That's not true. They're still foundational, but knowing the ins and outs on the day to day is probably not the most important thing. The most important thing for a small business owner is understanding how the decisions that they're making create a domino effect that just runs down the line. And so, for example, let's say that a manufacturer has changed a vendor for a widget, right? That's not an HR issue, except that that particular new vendor, when they send the widget, it is packaged differently, and now all of a sudden it takes twice as long for the employee to open the box and sort the widgets and do the things because it wasn't delivered in the same way because the contract wasn't written the same way, right? These are the ins and outs of the business that folks don't necessarily think this is going to affect my people. But that person who has to do that job now is held to a production standard where this thing that they now have to do is affecting their ability to meet the production standard, and they get frustrated, and they're just a person who doesn't make waves, and so all of a sudden their production slips and they feel less than, and then it affects their raise, and then they get a 10-cent raise. You're barely worth a dime, right? That type of thing. And now they're looking for a new job when they've been with you for 18 years, and it's all because you changed a vendor to supply a widget. Right? These are the intricacies of business, and where an HR business partner can come in and say, okay, as you're making these decisions, make sure you're talking to your people about how it affects them. Make sure you're walking the line and saying, hey, what's going on? And, maybe Bernie is opening that box and saying, hey, we have a problem here. But if they don't see you on that line out there working with you, and they never have an opportunity to have a one-on-one with you, which is about performance management, which is directly HR. If they don't have that opportunity to talk with you, you never knew that there was a problem to begin with. Bernie just took it and handled it until he didn't, and then he's gone, and now you've lost 18 years of institutional knowledge, and you have to replace that person, and you have to train them, and you have to deal with who that person might be that
And
you
you don't
don't know.
know how to train them because Bernie did it differently. And
Correct.
did it in a way that you didn't have any idea that a
Yes.
change was necessary. So suddenly
Correct.
now you don't even know what's happening.
And very
Yeah.
likely in a small business, and please understand, small business owners are fantastic, but they don't know what they don't know, right? And so very often in a small business, there's no SOP, there's no standard operating procedure where someone has taken the knowledge in Bernie's head and written it down,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, that happens even in large corporations.
Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And that's because people are busy doing the work. And
Right.
until you prioritize the foundational documents that helps everyone do the job, um, until you prioritize that, it never gets done. I'll give an example. I worked at a company. I was not a consultant for them, but I worked at a company where I was new in the job. Payroll was coming into HR, and I had hired, there were two people kind of doing accounting and HR functions both. And we had kind of split, and payroll was going to go with HR, and accounting was just going to be AR and AP. And I had hired a new assistant to be in the HR role. The day she started was the Monday after Thanksgiving, and the person who was in the other role had a heart attack on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I was new, she was new, the controller and accounting person was new. Not one of us had ever done payroll before, let alone learned how to answer the phones, let alone, right?
Mhm.
And so when we pulled out the instructions on how to do payroll, I think I cried every day that week. It was just highly stressful.
Right.
So when I left that position, there was an 80-page document. It was not an easy process to do payroll, to do it correctly. It was a very antiquated kind of DOS. I equate it to a DOS printer, matrix printer. It was very old. It did not have a graphic user interface. For those of you who don't know, that's what Windows sits in. It makes everything in pictures instead of codes, right? And so there's an 80-page document out there now that tells anybody how to do payroll. because no one had taken the time and made the commitment to make sure everything was written down in a way that anybody could do the job.
Well, right now you're talking to a lot of small business owners.
Yeah.
They're the folks uh, in a lot of smaller communities that we have around Southwest Iowa. They're the ones that watch this
Yeah.
show. So walk through the process of if you're going to sit down with a new client or a new potential client and they have 3 to 5 employees.
Mhm.
How does that go for them as you
Sure.
sit down and talk to them? Some of the information that you need to find for you to see how you can best serve them. What is that like?
Yeah. So I do something called an HR maturity diagnostic, which is really big words for do you know what's going on? Do you know what's happening in your business? And we go through all of the functional areas like what's your head count? Do you have a handbook? The things that are kind of basic. But we also get into okay, if this one person who's critical to your business leaves unexpectedly or has a heart attack,
Hmm.
um, what does it look like for you to replace that person? Is it absolute chaos? Are you hurting in a bad way? Are you and your business partner now working 90 hours a week to try to figure out what's going on? Yes, that's always the answer. But it's about what is your staffing plan? What's your succession plan? What's your long-term business plan? And how can I help you meet those goals? If your plan is to double in size in the next 5 years, let's build out a plan to do that strategically. You do not want to do that yourself and double your head count without help. That's not something you want to do.
Yeah, a lot of moving pieces there.
There
That
are a
yeah.
lot of moving pieces there. And so I go through kind of the buckets of HR functions. There's about 9 of them that have to do with compliance and learning and development and what's your staffing pipeline, those types of things. And I just ask questions and we just sit and chat. And that's free.
Okay.
And then I give you a report that says, hey, here's where you are. Here's where you should really be concerned. I would advise that you address these areas. If I can help, let me know. Right. And that's all free. Just like your doctor would sit down with you and say, so tell me a little bit about your medical history and tell
Hmm.
me, do you have an ache in your arm or, a rash or whatever? They're going to go through and take a history before they start diagnosing you and making recommendations on what to do. And that's what I do in the larger business sense. Then from there we get into project-based work. So I can advise you. I also have a subscription program where you can get an hour of my time every week to chat through whatever you want to chat through. Hey, this happened this week. What are your thoughts? Hey, this person is underperforming. Can you work with them and coach them? That's a project. And we just chat every week on a subscription. You send me a monthly bill and we chat every week and I help you build whatever your next course of action is. Then there are projects. I don't have a handbook. I have an FMLA issue. I have an ADA issue. FMLA only applies when you have a certain number
Hmm.
of employees, but ADA applies all the time. And work comp applies all the time. And often they run concurrently. And so those are project-based issues. So we're getting a little bit deeper, right? And then we get to what I call embedded HR, which is a per employee per month fee for me to build a full HR person. And you just say, hey, when you need HR, you call Amy, and your employees call me directly. And then if they have a question about benefits, if they have a question about, hey, my supervisor's being mean to me and I'm concerned about this, or hey, can you explain to me why I only got a 3% raise? Right?
Right.
All of those types of conversations, we've been talking every week. I've done projects for you. I'm your embedded HR. Then I can speak to your employees on your behalf and kind of take that load off of you because there is no physician, there is no accountant, there is no artistic director who got into business as an entrepreneur so that they could deal with employee issues. Nobody does that and says, "Yes, I want to deal with employee issues every day." I do. I think it's fun. But
Oh,
I know.
okay. Listen,
That's my own therapy
I
session.
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the process works. It's really a matter of where is the business? Where do you want to go? What do you need? And then I fill in the gaps for you.
I would really like to do a deeper dive into this. So can I get you to come back sometime and
Absolutely. I will
we
come back
yeah,
anytime.
we can
This
talk a little
couch
bit
is
more.
really comfy.
Yeah. Yeah, it does pretty well.
Yeah.
You're not the first one that have said that. So
Yeah. I was like, does
I
this recline?
it actually does. And I'm also thinking now that it was worth the hernia that I gave myself to get it
Uh,
up here.
right. Right.
But
Or
HR,
comp.
yeah, now, who am I going to file that with? HRHelix.com is your website?
HRhelix.com. You can schedule with me. You can email me directly, Amy, AMY, at HRhelix.com. I'm happy to chat anytime. You can call me. My phone number is out there on the website. I'll give it to you now, 785-760-3969.
There you go.
The number's very old and from the Kansas City area. And so 785, I am local to Omaha Council Bluffs area.
I know mine is from Okoboji, and people, they see it come up and it'll just say the city name and they're like, who's calling me from there? No, it's me.
Yes, you.
You know, it's
Yep.
just from radio life in
Yeah.
a previous life. That's how far it goes back.
Love that.
Well, I'm very grateful that you came in to talk a little bit. I feel maybe 0.5% more knowledgeable than I did.
Oh, I have
Which
failed
no,
miserably
I don't
then.
think so because that is about a 200% increase.
Okay, great.
So
My win for
yeah,
the morning.
so I'm
Yeah.
saying I don't know enough about it to think that I know enough,
Sure.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
So
people don't know what they don't know. And unfortunately, HR has a PR issue. So
all
I'm here to fight against it. I am my tagline, how I sign my emails, is always in your corner. And that doesn't matter if it's an employee or a business owner. I am in your corner, but I'm also in the corner of doing what's right. Always. So
that's Amy Luckenbill, and she is the owner of HR Helix and also the incoming president of Human Resources Association of the Midlands. Congratulations on that, by the way.
thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
And yeah, let's get you back, and we'll
Fantastic.
figure out, and we'll do a deeper dive and really start getting into some nuts and bolts of stuff that could help some of these small businesses.
Sounds great.
When you have a leak, a clogged drain, or when you're planning a big remodel, Waldstein Plumbing in Council Bluffs has you covered with fast, reliable service and expert craftsmanship, handling everything from small repairs to major installations. They're locally owned and trusted and take pride in doing the job right the first time. Residential or commercial, big or small, when plumbing problems strike, call Waldstein Plumbing. Visit waldsteinplumbing.com for a free estimate. And families and cemeteries across the region turn to Solid Ground Monument Company for skilled restoration that protects every story that's etched in stone, and they're now scheduling springtime services. The company provides monument repair, gentle cleaning, full reconstruction, and complete cemetery restoration. For families needing a new memorial, Solid Ground Monument Company will come to you in your time of need to design a tribute that truly honors your loved one. This is Southwest Iowa's trusted cemetery restoration and monument service. Solid Ground Monument Company, preserving legacies with care and craftsmanship. And on Local Roots, we explore the places that make our region home and the people who keep them connected. That's why we're proud to feature Marnie Elkhorn Communications, your local communications provider, serving Marnie, Elkhorn, Walnut, Avoca, and other Southwest Iowa towns with high-speed fiber internet, reliable phone service, and TV options built for rural living. With real local support and unlimited data plans, you get speeds up to 1 gig to work, stream, and stay in touch with family and neighbors. Visit metc.net to learn more and to get connected today. Thank you again, Amy Luckenbill, for being a part of today's show. Looking forward to having her back in the studio and looking forward to seeing you again here tomorrow on New Year's Eve. Only 1 day left of 2025. We'll see how long it gets me until I get used to saying 2026. I'm thinking it's probably going to be about this time next year. My name's Todd Studer. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning.